If you're looking to start your therapeutic microdosing journey, but don't know where to start, especially when looking for the highest quality ingredients, including nootropics, and what you'd expect from a true microdose capsule, check out our friends at Brainsupreme. They offer the absolute highest quality ingredients so you can start your microdosing journey knowing that you're getting top-notch ingredients. To find out more, visit their website using that link right in the description, and you can get 15% off your entire order.
I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts. You have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Jehan Sattaur. Be sure and check out my films, Doors of Perception on Amazon Prime, Occult Louisiana is on Tubi. We are booking guests for January. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Be sure to visit our website, forbiddenknowledge.news. It's also the home of the Forbidden Knowledge Network. We feature some of your favorite podcasts and content creators. Today I want to welcome back to the show Jehan Sattaur. He is a CTAA-accredited cognitive behavioral therapist, hypnotherapist, nutrition coach, mindfulness teacher, and specialist in the area of subconscious self-sabotage. Jehan, welcome back. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks so much for coming back on. With so many independent content creators now presenting the observations about the state of society, there's a lot of fundamental problems being revealed about the systems we operate under. And while there are amazing researchers presenting this information, there's still seemingly very few tangible solutions being offered, which is exactly what we'll be discussing today, as we try to do with every episode. But your work focuses on personal solutions to help people navigate the realm. Looking forward to sharing your insights with the audience. Before we get into this, it has been a while since you've been on. Remind us a little bit about yourself and let the audience know how they can find out more.
Well, I'm just a regular guy that went through some stuff, and through experiencing that stuff, I had a rapid awakening process, and I became very interested in hypnotherapy. So that's what I do. That's my main tool that I use. And I guess some people consider me an expert on subconscious self-sabotage. It's not for everyone. It's for people who are really just tired of repeating the same patterns over and over. And, I used to be a musician. I still dabble in it a little bit. And you can find me on the Boundless Authenticity podcast. I release episodes at least once a week. And, yeah.
Right on, man. So let's start with your observations of the state of society. With everything that's unfolded, there seems to be a lot of chaos, a lot of unsureness, a lot of people looking for spiritual answers and solutions, and unfortunately, a little bit of psychosis in there as well. But I have to look at the course that we've taken over the past couple of decades and wonder if this is a natural course of evolution at all, or if it's been completely steered by these parasitic forces that we know of as a ruling class. What are your thoughts on where we're
at? Well, you just said it. It's the parasitic ruling class. It's the conglomerates, corporations. They're pulling the strings. We often hear about, the Fritz Springmeier theory, bloodlines of the Illuminati and all that. It's more than 13. It's more than just a few families doing this. It's a consolidated, deliberate attempt to steer humanity in any direction that is away from personal sovereignty, autonomy, any sense of real internal freedom. Everything has been co opted. I'm sure you might have listened to my podcast episode, The Cult of Psychotherapy, where I unpack how that too was never intended to help anyone with their emotional or mental health. Everything around us is by design. And the issue with that, like you were saying, is that there's this spiritual component that usually accompanies a desire for more freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
With that, we have the new age, which has been co-opted, and I would offend a lot of people by saying this, and
Go
I'm not
for it,
afraid
man.
to do so. 95% of what you hear in the new age is useless
Right.
stuff. People need to come to the point of awareness now where religion is also useless. It has done some things, like it's given us the 10 Commandments, etc. But in reality, the majority of spiritual knowledge that can be passed down lives within those 10 commandments. It is how you apply those things that makes the difference. If you read all of the spiritual texts and you make comparisons, they're all essentially giving you one critical insight, and it is that all is within you. Everything is mind, and it is all inside of you. How well you can navigate depends on your internal relationship. And so the spiritual seekers are now being guided towards the internet, which you and I know is exactly what it sounds like, a net. It catches your attention, and it's hard to pull away from that. So people who are well-intentioned, like the listeners of this podcast or the listeners of Boundless Authenticity podcast or whoever else, will gravitate towards whoever appears to be an expert, because we've been conditioned since 1947 to accept this idea of expertise as a solution. There's a leader that will basically have all of the information, and that's coming from ancient archetypes, but it was perfected at the birth of Tavistock in 1947 in London. And it was just the Tavistock Clinic started in World War I, and it really began by researching shell shock in soldiers. So that's what we now call PTSD. But that was never really about helping anybody. All it boils down to is we're going to run a series of experiments to figure out what are the common threads between humans and their relationship to trauma and how that changes behavior. And out of that came mass persuasion, how to change morale of the population, how to use propaganda techniques. Obviously, coming out of the World War, a lot of that was focused around how do you keep populations obedient during wartime, and in increasing moments of stress, how do you stop them from rebelling when they're under stress? So when you understand that everything in this world is geared around stopping you from rebelling when you wake up to, and I shouldn't even use the term wake up, when you become aware that something in your environment is actually causing you to feel like a victim.
Right.
You could say that a lot of the you're not a victim of circumstances programming that you see repetitively in the spiritual and coaching arena is actually more Tavistock having their fingers in that pie as well, trying to divert your attention to radical self-growth, because it's a trick. It's a mirror. Look at yourself so that all you see is yourself. Fundamentally, then, because you're under stress, you're in survival mode, and you're only focusing on the development of your quote-unquote spiritual self, which fuels you towards narcissism. The same thing, there was a really stupid clip going around the internet viral about don't love your job, job your love, with the that dude from Mind Valley and some weird lady. It is as stupid as it sounds. Okay, so the intention behind that is to use the idea that you shouldn't be working for someone else. You need to turn the thing that you love into a form of income. But that's not ideal for everyone. We need street sweepers, we need maids, nurses, doctors. We need people who can do the hard jobs that often are thankless, often may not lead to a life full of passion and purpose and all of that. Sometimes though, you talk to those people and they're burnt out all the time and they want to do something else, but they know that what they're doing is necessary. It may not necessarily check all their boxes. That's just an example. So that is a way of diverting people's attention and focus and who they are on the inside. And again, they get us because most people are actually good. Most people just want to be loved. They just want to create love from whatever they experience. And they don't know that we have just been turned into, the Smashing Pumpkins line. In spite of my rage, I'm just a rat in a cage, right? So that's where we're at. And then you have the media, of course, which is more Tavistock and three-letter agencies that they know that the most effective way to shape society is not through force, but actually through these moving pictures. It began with radio and newspapers. Once that fear of what you can hear on the radio wore off and they realized they needed something stronger, then they realized that the repetition of the images and stories and slogans could be easier implanted without you realizing it through the TV, right?
100%. Yeah.
So, yeah, and they just use these three basic techniques, which would be number one, the repetition principle, which is you say something often enough and people are going to accept that as truth. It only takes the subconscious mind 2 to 3 repetitions. Okay. When I say subconscious, I'm still talking in those terms as though there's a difference between conscious and subconscious. But realistically, when a person is stressed out to the max, which is what we're seeing right now in this present global culture, all is mind. There's very little critical thinking whatsoever. And so in hypnosis, we talk about the critical faculty, which is the doorway to the unconscious processes that run everything. But that doorway becomes wide open when you're under this much stress, right? The other principle is the authority principle that I spoke about a little bit earlier. Put somebody in a butcher coat or a lab coat or a general's uniform, and the public is going to obey that. That's why programming from Grey's Anatomy and medical shows and stuff work and sell so well because of the authority principle. They can tell you anything. There's also the reason why you watch certain TV shows, from The Walking Dead to anything on the CW superhero shows. You notice that they dress a very particular way. You compare the way that they're dressed to like Dean and Sam in Supernatural.
Right.
It's a very particular color scheme, a particular dress code, usually a well-tailored t-shirt and a long sleeve shirt or a jacket or something over the top, using certain colors and hues. And that also engages the authority principle, causes you to follow that person as though they're somewhat, I guess, like you, but they know a lot more about a particular topic or something within an emotional context. And so then they can use emotional triggers like fear and sex or outrage to just basically bypass any rational faculties that you have, right? And that's actually just the formula of modern advertising and the 24-hour news cycles. That's why CNN changed their name from CNN to breaking news on paper, right? You hardly ever hear "this is CNN" anymore. You'll always hear breaking news, and they go right into something. And a lot of the time, if you sit there, you realize, wait a minute, this actually isn't even urgent. But just because they've said breaking news before that, limbic system gets activated and you blindly accept information. Whether you can try to accept or reject that depends on your level of stress at the moment. Depends on what you put in your body.
Mm.
I like to use the example of gosh, his name escapes me because I haven't talked about this in a while, but he was the producer and creator of Gilligan's Island. And people were reaching out to him, sending letters, basically saying, why do you have those people trapped on that island? We have the resources, we can go and save them. And that was the moment he realized that people were stupid. I think his name is Sherwood Schwartz or something like
Yeah.
that. Um, and that goes to show you the effect of television back in a time period where the technology wasn't that advanced, when people were not.
They can make anyone an expert, anyone that they handpick that is willing to carry a certain narrative. They don't even have to be educated thoroughly in whatever they're trying to promote. They just have to be the one that plays the part of the expert, and you can have an entire population swaying their opinion on one thing or another because of this douchebag that they decided was an expert. It's crazy. I want to go back to something you were saying about the New Age spirituality traps, New Age or otherwise. Right now, what's being promoted is the information and the knowledge and the spiritual wisdom, but zero application. Only the rewarding of understanding certain spiritual concepts to a certain degree, but those that are preaching these same concepts are addicted, are sexual deviants, or have other huge major problems in their life, but they know some heavy duty spiritual stuff, so they are going to be the new face of whatever spiritual movement is come about. So this is another problem that I see we're facing right now.
Well, you and I share that common bond. We came up in, the age of awakening. We were both spurred very much by our interest in fringe topics, paranormal, conspiracy, and spirituality, right?
Mm-hmm.
We both are very, according to the narrative, spiritually aware, but also aware on a level outside of that due to our ability to critically think. So I don't feel like you and I probably have fallen into the traps that everyone else has. The issue with the New Age programming is that if that information was inherently empowering at all, we would not have any access to it. Okay? Right. It's that simple and sad in the reality of it. And a lot of people will argue, probably people are arguing and turning this episode off right now because I've touched on something that they don't want to accept. Ultimately, no one should be able to tell you what your reality is, how to worship, who to worship. Ultimately, if you get right down to the deepest, darkest parts of you and you figure out how to remove those things, there's a part of your brain that needs to be connected to your spiritual self, or you will die. It has been measured in atheists that these parts of your brain, they will shut off over time if you constantly deny the concept of God to a degree that you just, you don't even want to acknowledge anything in that way. And so there's so many different ways that we get sucked into that. There's tons of psychological manipulation between the New Age spirituality and other sources of worship as well. It's all the same. And it's the allure of belonging. Humans are literally wired for connection. We want to have family. We want to have a tribe. We want to have a purpose. New Age and religious organizations know that, and they use it against us. The New Age is basically offering things like we see a lot of the cosmic family type deal. It's the best way I can describe it for this purpose. It's promising you that you're a part of a chosen generation. We hear the chosen ones a lot in so many different places. We're supposed to be here to raise the planet's vibration, right? logically, we live and we die. Okay? If there's a group of us that are supposed to raise the vibration, what happens when we die? Who comes along after that? If you don't ask those questions and actually just be honest about it, then you're not going to want to hear anything else. And so it preys on our deep need to be accepted and loved and put on a pedestal and seen as something special above others, right? It's like identity fusion, really. It's that your sense of self is going to merge with this group, and you can't leave or deny the information or allow yourself the patience and the grace to think critically about it, because you don't want to leave the community. You don't want to upset the community because they've gotten in your head, and now you're convinced that somehow if you put that to the side, even just to think about it, you would abandon your soul's mission in a weird way, right? Anybody could listen to what I'm saying and then go back and scroll through your Instagram feed and listen to what they say, and you realize exactly what I'm talking about. You know, if you don't resonate, your vibration isn't high enough. You know, we also see that with the conspiracy tribe too, where it's like, you know, you have cognitive dissonance if you don't blindly accept what I'm telling you about the parasitic elites. You should be able to actually look around and see it on your own. Look at how everything is just set up in a way that it's a carrot on a string and it's taken from us. If you can't see that basic thing, then you're going to have a hard time understanding anything about manipulation, because people do that with their interpersonal relationships too. They just get puppeted by other people, and there's an unconscious component to that. You know, if I lose this person, or if I get excluded from a group, then, you know, I don't know what I'm going to do. So many people will stay in a toxic relationship with toxic dynamics, or in a toxic group when doubts arise, because losing that, it feels like losing yourself. You build your identity around everything. Right. Then, you know, you exploit people's vulnerability with that kind of stuff. Like, nobody is waking up one day and they're like, oh, I want to be a part of a spiritual movement. Usually, and within the context of psychology and hypnotherapy, we understand that a crisis is a transition from one point in life to another. And in between, there's change, and that change is difficult to accept and implement. So when people arrive at a point of spirituality, they're usually at rock bottom. They're feeling broken. They're feeling like that spiritual part of themselves that you spoke about is now the catalyst for a search, right? So that's exactly when they're the most vulnerable. So you're talking about grief, trauma, divorce, illness. Those are the usual gateways that the new age space will get its teeth in you, or religion will find you, you know, or you find religion. So instead of healing, that pain then gets monetized. Yes. You're sucked into the cycle of endless courses. If you're fucking up your chakras and you got to get them healed, you got to go to a spiritual retreat. Yep. And you got to do like DNA activations and all this crazy stuff. I just want people to be aware of pain point marketing. That's what I call it. You're identifying somebody's wound, and then you're offering an expensive fix. So people in crisis kind of accept extreme ideas more easily, and they're desperate for relief. And I know there's going to be assholes that are going to be like, well, that's the same thing that you do. You're a coach. And to those people, I would say, I'm actually in the book as a hypnotherapist. I charge $150 per hour because that's the going rate in that field. And oftentimes the people that want to do the deep self-sabotage coaching, they're willing to pay you big bucks, but they're also, they have the money available and they want to change. So they'll pay you. And imagine you're sitting with someone that is in such a state of crisis. Let's say they're rich, they think they've had it all, but they're empty on the inside. They have all these traumas and fears on the surface, and they're going to fight you to keep those traumas and fears. Somebody comes to me for hypnotherapy and general counseling, we're going to mostly talk for an hour, and that person moves on. Whether they do anything or not, it's none of my damn business, because I can't steal anyone's learning from them. how they learn is by doing. So they have to implement the revelations, the insights, and the tips that I give them in the hour, and move on and come back and tell me the next week, here's what I learned or whatever. But nobody wants to fight. It's a very low return on investment to fight with someone, right? So people need to take that into consideration too, because there's a lot of well-intentioned counselors and coaches and people who have private practices, whether they're psychiatrists or conventional licensed psychologists, etc., that are doing the same work. And you're looking for who is knowledgeable, who has a high emotional intelligence and cares about you. And maybe certain services that they have might be steep, but it will be worth it because you want somebody that's going to be on your team and fight for you. A lot of these guys just don't give a shit about you. They know you're desperate for relief, and so they'll tell you any old thing. They probably got a $25 certificate from somewhere, or woke up one day and they were like, hey, you know what? If I just spend a little bit of my money and I make it look like I'm rich, I can sell you something, you know, and convince you I have insight. And like you were speaking about, I know you see it because you interview a lot of people. There's a lot of regurgitators out there. There's a lot of fakers and frauds, and you're just doing the interview because you're trying to get content out there and you're hoping that people can exercise their own discernment. But what the fuck is discernment? Discernment is common sense. And when you're in stress, you don't have common sense. You're operating solely out of fear. So it's not that you're stupid or dumb, it's that you're so stressed. Your limbic system is turned on. You can't ask the relevant questions beyond a certain point to save yourself from getting scammed, right? So that's the way it goes. I'll let you ask questions.
That makes a lot of sense, man. Let's talk a little bit more about common programming and permission-giving beliefs, as you have here in your talking points. Tell us a little bit more.
You know, the interesting thing about the common programming is that there's kind of like the resistance around this topic because of the cultural conditioning. So I always talk about how anything you watch on a screen, the prefrontal cortex deactivates, and that just allows information to become the direct input into other areas of the brain. It's difficult to reject information even when you disagree with it. I talk about how the limbic system is a recording device and it wants you to stay the same. It wants to keep you from having a painful experience that you had before. And so that becomes problematic because if you are also just trying to do your best and you feel like you're doing something that is good for you and it turns out to be bad, well, naturally you don't want to hear that at all, right? So you have these pathways that are activated in the brain. The main one that I would talk about is the stress fear memory pathway, and it's from your prefrontal cortex to the nucleus accumbens through something called the ventral tegmental area, which very simply deals with the distribution of different neurotransmitters, and then it reaches your hippocampus. So imagine you come across a new scenario in your life and you don't have a reference from childhood, then you can't just say that that's childhood trauma, because I couldn't tell you how many times I've sat with a person, poked around in their subconscious mind, and there was no trauma to link back to this thing, right? So you see a lot of that these days where people are coming up with responses to life based on what they've recorded in their hippocampus, which would be like a tape recording, right? Records everything you've seen in your childhood, your teenage years, in a movie, on YouTube, a social media clip, right? Your brain just believes that you're the person on the screen. So adding that to the category of regular childhood trauma, then you get the basic common programming, right? And so the reason why you're self-sabotaging is either because you learned something in childhood, as you went through Jean Piaget's lovely stages of cognitive development from 0 to 7. You want to take in all this, as much information as you can so you can survive. From 7 to 14, you're testing that in the environment to see whether it gives you a reward or not. The reward is often an emotion, or the behavior triggers certain neurotransmitter responses in the brain. So you say, okay, that's good. Your limbic system says, okay, that's good, even if it was bad for me. And from 14 to 21, you're doing the same thing. You're just testing and discarding programming. I like to differentiate between programming and conditioning. We know BF Skinner's work on conditioning shows us how everything is behavior based, reward based. So you execute behaviors because you get a reward. Programming is usually linguistic, language based, the things that we think of inside of our head. I'm laying the groundwork for everything that's going to come next. So it's like from 21 then to about 30, what's happening is that your brain has learned a whole lot of stuff, but it's not fully developed. So this is why teenagers are so difficult to deal with. They don't have fully developed brains. In your 20s, what do they teach you? They condition you to live fast and die young.
Yeah.
So you make all of these choices that destroy your brain, destroy your serotonin, destroy your dopamine. We're now surrounded by a sea of screens which destroy the prefrontal cortex. Rational thinking and willpower becomes incredibly weakened. And so those are basically the ways that you get programmed. After 35, we've had all the different experts. I like to give credit where it's due. Joe Dispenza has a body of work on this, even though I'm not completely sold on him because of the whole new age thing I just talked about. But the point is that he can present scientific evidence on paper that shows brain scans, etc., which is what you need to look at. And you know that it's very hard to make changes to your default conditioning and programming because you're so set in your ways after 35 because of the development of the brain being finalized. Okay. But that doesn't mean that nothing can change. We also have all of the research that says that meditation can slowly rewire the brain. Changing repetitive patterns of behavior can slowly rewire the brain. And all of that goes together with understanding where your trauma comes from. Is it implanted through culture, or is it your childhood traumas? Following? And so, along with that, then, rejection, resentment, the grudges that you hold, the regret that you have formed in your life from missing out on certain things, or realizing that you made the best choice that you could have, but it wasn't necessarily good. In a lot of ways, you lose relationships with people, etc. The loneliness that you feel in society. A lot of my clients are men. They feel alone as a man because, let's face it, women and men are two different entities altogether. They're wired differently. Their brains are different. And communication between people is so difficult now because of all of the things that I've mentioned before that are dividing us. So you have people that have fear of success and fear of failure that are all coming from different places. And they're all working together in the same group of programming. And these things can become apparent at any point in your life. People will tend to any kind of belief. They will tend to hold on as hard as they can to any kind of belief just because they feel comfortable with that, even when those beliefs are detrimental to growth and behavior. So you have people with the most common linguistic programming, which is I'm a victim, I've been molested, I am broken, I'm abused, I'm traumatized, and they don't have any emotional reference for what it's like to be safe, and therefore they have no programming for that either. So it's hard to condition them or program them or deprogram them out of that in any way. Permission giving beliefs comes in where a lot of the self-sabotage stuff is based around that because it's the exact same as addictive thinking. This model has been used by the Beck Institute to basically determine the ways that people will justify beliefs and behaviors. It's insidious because it's behind that attraction to have that second or third cup of coffee when you're already woken up. You after one cup of coffee, you're into very dangerous territory in terms of the dose of caffeine, probably moving into an unhealthy dose of caffeine, which, while on a cognitive level you don't notice anything, your body's screaming for help, right? Um, I'll just have that cookie that I want. I'm craving a cookie. Then you eat the whole fucking package. And, you say, oh, well, I didn't gain any weight yesterday, so I'll just eat another pack of Oreos today, and so on and so forth. You're way above your calorie intake for the day. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, you realize, how the hell did I gain 15 pounds, right? And you begin to spiral out because you don't know how to correct that, because you have people that literally sit around in labs and make everything more addictive, from the alcohol to the energy drinks to the coffee to the tea to the popcorn and the cookies and the chips and everything. People get addicted through the breaking down of the neurotransmitter pathways to YouTube or Netflix. So they're like, I'll just watch another episode. Whatever I get emotionally from that feels great. And it's hard to override the addictive properties of the chemicals themselves. So couple that with beliefs about it. Imagine if you're thinking like core ideas, like if I feel or think something unpleasant, I can get rid of that by avoiding it with food or drink or drugs or television. And really what a person's saying is, I just don't understand how to process unpleasant feelings, right? And that's actually the emotional language has a lot to do with understanding. I can't tolerate those unpleasant feelings, so I'm just going to avoid that. A lot of people like to narrow that down to avoidant personality, but in essence, human beings are the same as rats. In science, they call it risk aversion. So both humans and rats are risk aversive. That's why rats work so well in every experiment, right? You get a lot of beliefs, like permission giving beliefs, like I can't cope as others can. I'm needy and weak. It's usually what becomes before putting something in your mouth or smoking, weed. Other hard drugs also follow that line. Those beliefs get activated too by anxiety or some kind of fear. Everyone's pretty much a victim of these. We'll tell ourselves, it's not hurting anyone, so what's the problem? You use that to give yourself permission to numb yourself or indulge in something bad. People with that belief running tend to think of themselves as rebels or nonconformists as well. That's how they will look at a person that, they've got blue or green hair and they're dressed like a goth or something. They see themselves as a nonconformist. And a lot of those guys are really sweet, really nice, and very intelligent. But then there's the other side of that too, where they feel like going along with that means they have to be an addict. Yeah. I fell victim to that myself in the music industry. I felt like being an addict meant I was a tortured artist, and I could operate from that. But a lot of it is just about seeking to neglect the obligations and responsibilities of being a functional human. It's difficult to be a functional, sober human. People will use permission-giving beliefs like my way is the best way. I need to be in complete control. People will self-sabotage because of those, because they believe that they're always right, and so they're in control. They believe that sex, drugs, and sugar and alcohol aren't a problem. People tell themselves in addiction a lot of the time, this isn't a problem for me. I can stop whenever I want, because behind that, they're protecting the sense of omnipotence that they get when they're running on caffeine or sniffing coke or whatever the case is. You just see it a lot. That's why people can do heroin and function at an office job, and you would not know that your buddy across the hall from you, John, is a heroin addict, or he's on fentanyl or anything like that. People find ways of using just enough. Permission giving beliefs are, I can't tolerate boredom. Everyone can do whatever they want. If I feel like doing something, I am free to go ahead and do it. And that's the way that people weaponize free will against themselves.
And our systems just
You know,
perpetuate this, especially our medical system and
Absolutely.
our healthcare system, the mental health care system. They provide Band-Aid solutions, which actually add to the problems and contribute to the addictions that people have as well. So it's a vicious cycle that's almost impossible to get out of if you're looking for solutions from the system itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is any idea that's based around entitlement that you can do whatever you want, or anybody can do whatever they want regardless of anybody else's needs, or regardless of what is morally, ethically, and spiritually right, that's an attack on you as a spiritual being. That's a part of the spiritual warfare. Permission giving beliefs can be any idea or automatic thought that sound like just one ice cream, just one coffee, one beer, one slice of chocolate cake. As long as I'm careful, drugs won't hurt me. Um, a lot of people with caffeine addiction or alcoholism are like, without it, life would be boring. You know, I need something to perk me up or calm me down. Nobody will find out. It's going to help me to relax. Like, I could go on and on and on, but I know that people are listening to this right now like, oh, fuck, that's me, or that has been me, right? As you were saying, there's a lot of people in the spiritual community that are fakers, and they think that they can get away with it. So they think that they can drink or use drugs or do whatever because their fucking vibration is going to alchemize it, right? Spiritual people don't get fat, sick, or cancer or heart disease, right? Because you're saying that because you're grateful, you're selling other people the idea that just because you're grateful and you meditate and you do ayahuasca, that you're better than everyone else, and your hardware now doesn't work the same as everyone else. It's very egotistical, very immature, dangerous ideas to share with people, because most people are already looking for excuses to self-destruct or to numb some pain or whatever the case is, to justify unhealthy lifestyle choices, etc. You know, so permission giving beliefs, to sum that up, are just these linguistic statements that we use to self-justify any pattern of behavior, and they're all linked and to the documented beliefs about addictive behavior. So you can literally read a textbook called Cognitive Therapy of Substance Abuse. It's by the Beck Institute. And you know, that's how we justify porn and shopping and destroying our relationships and everything else. That's how we tear the whole chance at a good life down, you know?
This is the kind of information that should be taught to children before anything else. The awareness of the programming, the awareness of the things that could lead us into all the traps that you just mentioned. Being aware of this from a very young age could save people from going through a lot of the problems that most of society is facing right now. So super important information. If we could only translate that to some kind of education for younger people, that'd be absolutely amazing. I want to talk a little bit about the cereal box hypothesis. What is this?
The cereal box hypothesis is just a name that I've given to all of that I mentioned before. It's that every program, every linguistic challenge in your mind is like a cereal box. Every belief is like a cereal box. Imagine emptying a box of Fruity Pebbles, and each pebble is an idea or a thought or an emotional response that is linked to a program called Fruity Pebbles. So that's the same as I'm not enough. When you are faced with stress and it triggers that program, Fruity Pebbles, you're basically going to have a thought that is linked to that program. So, like I said, you replace that with I'm not enough, then you're going to have every thought possible that's linked to that knocking around in your head. And until you become aware of it and question it, it's not going to empty out. So it's like pouring a bowl of Fruity Pebbles, right? You empty that box by eating the cereal and you get rid of it, then eventually you throw away the box. And so there needs to be more emphasis within the entire mental and emotional health industry around unpacking using correct questioning frameworks, so that through the process of self-realization and self-insight, remember that internal wisdom, that is the driving force between all deep spiritual breakthroughs and just being normal that we were referencing at the beginning. That's how you grow. The information out there is not inherently empowering at all. So you must delete those linguistic programs, thought patterns that are linked to those blanket headings. I'm not enough, I'm not safe enough, etc., etc. Those permission giving beliefs all fall into that category. Okay. So the work isn't done just because you get hypnotized. The real work begins when you come out of it and you talk about what you experienced and you ask questions about that. The work is in journaling and realizing, oh shit, this repetitive thing, this self-justification, or this way that I see this other person, whatever it is, that's all coming from inside of me. And okay, I'm gonna get really curious about what that is. In meditation, it's not just glorified breathing. It's saying, okay, what do I see? What do I smell? What do I hear? What am I thinking in relationship to that? What impulses seem to come from different directions in my mind, and within that landscape? People experience those things differently through their visual faculty. People have smells. People have auditory responses. Question all of those things. For what purpose do I have that thought? What does that mean to me? Because what and why are actually two different categories inside of the landscape of the mind. Why usually tells you the meaning that you assign to things, and what tells you the reward that you get for the behavior or the emotional response. So when people are asking themselves questions like that, you will grow at a much faster rate than taking some fucktard's course online. Okay. And I'm not necessarily crying down my colleagues, but this is why I've been banned on the internet since 2015, because I very simply became aware of what I wasn't aware of by asking questions through reading these cognitive psychology books, cognitive therapy for substance abuse, cognitive therapy for anxiety and depression, dialectical behavior therapy textbooks, CBT textbooks, asking questions about the discrepancies that I noticed in the protocols that were assigned to certain things. Okay. And a lot of people don't do that because they don't want to lose their license. Or if they do that and they ask questions, they get hauled into somebody else's office and they're told, don't do that. Right. So self-responsibility is how we break free, and we learn to speak to ourselves with more respect and more curiosity. Curiosity is a form of love. I say that all the time. Okay, there's nothing wrong with asking questions.
Right on. Let's talk a little bit about how people can exist in the realm and feel comfortable. We're discussing about how so many people are running away from their feelings, depression, turning to drugs. Because once you start becoming aware of the nature of our systems, it can get a bit depressing. I went through some depression whenever I started becoming aware of things. A lot of people are looking at Gnostic spiritual concepts, wondering if we're recycled, if we're reincarnated to come back to this shithole of a realm that's controlled by lizard people. Why would I want to do that? What is the point of this realm? What would you tell people that may snap them out of that negative thought pattern?
Well, Chris, I'm going to gaslight you right now. You chose to come here and have that experience. Listen, these people are very clever and they have explanations for everything, because they understand that if they don't have an explanation for it, the power grid slips. Okay? That I call spiritual gaslighting. How dare you tell a woman that was raped by 3 men in a gang rape in an alley that she chose that and came to this reality to experience that? How disgusting of you. You understand? That just doesn't cut it. I love Dolores Cannon. I like her work, but I fundamentally do not agree that something happened and you were floating around in the spiritual realm and you said, hey, I want to get fucking raped today. And that's not that. Nobody does
Yeah.
that. Nobody does that. That is incredibly unloving to put that on people. Now, self-responsibility is important. And that is how you break the power grid, like I said before, because nobody's in charge of your healing and your level of intelligence except for you. You realize that they put us in front of cartoons when we're young because that's the earliest mass media conditioning technique that they can come across besides conventional schooling. So you're being shaped by this power grid through various means to basically teach you when to laugh, what to laugh at, who to trust, what's normal. I like to call it like the Tom and Jerry programming thing, because in Tom and Jerry, if Tom ever caught Jerry, the show would be over in the first episode. Right? And so that's how the system works. The system is Tom. Okay? And we're all running around knowing we have this deep discomfort with the way that things are set up. And so that's how you end up with people who are operating within, let's say, environmental institutions, environmental protection institutions. They're in stress, they're in fear, there's protocols, but you can't follow those protocols because if you actually did anything to save the environment, conglomerates and rich businessmen would suffer and lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
What do they need the money for if they print the money in the first place, you ask? Well, without the illusion of money, without the illusion of an energy exchange, you can't be controlled. Because if we all lived in common unity, in spite of our differences, which differences can make us stronger if we agree to disagree, and we agree that whatever we do agree on, we can use that as a strength to build something new from, then we can survive and thrive without having the experts and the businessmen and the government and all that. Traditionally, we have all this information coming through the pipeline about government actually meaning mind control. And whether that's true or not true is neither here nor there. The point is that you have people that want to run your life for you. They want to now put us in digital enslavement using the illusion of the energy exchange. You need money, but that is just so that they can continue to harvest your attempts at being a good person, and then you get nothing out of it. If you look at how threat is always leveraged in every arena, then you can understand that that's not normal. That's not normal. If you look at the relationship between a lion and a gazelle, you know that gazelle knows that it has to play the game and it will be eaten. It is food. Okay, so there's at a certain level, there's that level of consent between the lion and the gazelle. The gazelle knows one day I'll get caught and get eaten. And if I get to live my life, then okay, so be it. So they have positioned themselves at the top of the food chain as the lions so that they can use that against us and trick us into thinking, oh, you know what? I'm just doing a job, for example. So I have to feed my family, so I have to go along with this. The doctor knows what's best for me, so I have to go along with this because who am I? I don't know anything about medicine, right? You could easily just turn that on its head and say, okay, when I eat fried chicken, does my stomach get upset? Yeah. If the answer is yes for you, that's damaging you. That's common sense. Don't fucking eat the fried chicken. Okay? If you know that when you wake up in the morning and you need 10 cups of coffee to get through the day and you're wired but tired at night and you can't sleep and you're on that path, why are you doing that? That's common sense. I should just stick to the one cup. What are the reasons why I can't stick to the one cup? Why do I go to the pub every evening and drink a pint with my buddies and then I stumble home? What is damaging yourself doing? What is the reward for that? That's common sense. If you know you're working a job and you don't like doing it and you feel like you would be better off doing something else, don't quit your job. Think about what that something else is. Is that something you can make into a hobby and maybe making a few extra dollars to feed your family and have a great Christmas, or the perks that go along with having extra money to throw around? What is that? But don't quit your job because the new age said so, or some coach on the internet said so, or because a conspiracy theorist said the government's sucking us dry. Yes, they are. Right? But use your common sense. Common sense is not so common. I used to hear that when I was growing up and I wondered what it meant. And I realized as I got older, that's what it means. It's where we steal from ourselves. So to defeat that system, we have to take responsibility for ourselves. Because at the end of the day, if digital ID gets implemented and we don't speak out and strike back against it, start petitions in our neighborhood, push against the government, don't vote for them. Okay? Don't vote for them. Nobody votes. Because then that would force the system to say, okay, well, is it rigged or not? You see a certain number of votes showing up. You realize, did you vote? Did you vote, Chris? John, did you vote? No. Okay, well, something's wrong. Get angry at these people. Because as David Icke says, as much as I don't like to reference him so much, it's the many versus the few, right? Why don't we want to be in charge of our lives completely? All of that is stuff that we need to consider because it's not leading to progress. It's not going to be a good environment for our children. We complain about how the generations do this, that, and the other, and we're always dividing ourselves between the generations. And we see that generations get dumber and more passive. Why is that? Because we are complicit and complacent with our own mental and emotional slavery. It's because we say that we're just going to go along to get along. But it's not working for us. It never has.
Right.
I mean, of course, you get these people that come along and they're like, oh, but we need someone to lead us and guide us and do that. Okay. So why can't we all just communicate and share the burden? Okay. Because ultimately with leadership, there's a lot of pressure on one person or a few people. And we have, too many podcasts, too many influencers, too many news stations, too many musicians on a stage yelling their beliefs at you, too many actors on a screen leveraging their perceived expertise and importance. And we love it. We don't want to think about all of that and what it's actually pushing us towards.
100%.
Right? So I'll stop there, think about Tom and Jerry and realizes that the cat chases the mouse, chaos ensues, there's no words needed, but the simplicity of that is where the conditioning is. And that's exactly what we're doing. Stop chasing the mouse.
100%.
Right?
There's some wonderful insights. I want to get your thoughts on one more thing before we close out. There seems to be this rise of people that are attempting to use magic and ritual to solve all their problems without doing any inner work or healing or of any kind, just relying on the esoteric knowledge that they heard on TikTok to do spells and get ahead in life.
Well, that's coming from the people that are trying to kill us.
Yeah.
That's what they use. And I know that for some people, this is difficult to wrap your mind around, but there are energies that exist beyond the veil, if you will. There are these energies that are more than willing to help us. But the reason they're willing to help us is because we give them life by using them. One of the worst experiences that I ever had in my life was reading the Grand Keys of Solomon.
Oh, wow.
Just not even reading it out loud, but reading the incantations and stuff in that and trying to understand what was going on for the purpose of understanding, not for my own personal use. called in these energies because they love when you pay them attention. Okay. That's why manifesting is dangerous. You're not, I jokingly say you're not going to squeeze your asshole together and manifest $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay. How it actually works is you do things and you are thinking differently. So you act differently. You come across people and circumstances because you did something slightly different. And then all of a sudden you make connections with other people. We need each other. We need that community. That's why I say we would survive and thrive. On TikTok, the witchcraft thing, they're teaching all of the elements that they use in their secret meetings to bring in these energies that enhance their ability to do things quickly. That's why even when they do get negative repercussions to what they do, they never stop. They just continue and go again. We'll just sacrifice another baby.
Right.
We'll just kill another person. We'll just get people to think negatively and distract them and use that energy, because these beings that live beyond the spiritual and metaphysical planes that we can perceive only through personal insight are just willing to come across and give you something in exchange. And that's why oftentimes when people manifest, you will, if you research it, you will hear instances where somebody manifests a certain amount of money, like $1,000 in a week or $200,000 or something like that. It comes at a cost. The person that's offering it wants something morally or spiritually valuable to you, and they want to take that from you. Okay. And it's usually along the lines of sexual depravity and perversion, usually along the lines of getting stuck in a contractual cycle where they own you, your image or your likeness. I know that sounds a lot like the music and Hollywood industry, but it goes beyond. It goes right up the chain in businesses and things like that too. We'll give you what you need in exchange for all of you, all the best parts of you. So there's a lot that you can say about that, but people need to be acutely aware that slow and steady wins the race. Integrity wins the race, but people are allergic to integrity because we love quick fixes.
Yeah.
We want it all now. And that's not wise, because when those things come into your life, they will violate your mind and your body through spiritual warfare. They will co-opt your thinking. That's why we have so many undiagnosed and diagnosed schizophrenics and bipolars and all that stuff. And they make this stuff up about brain chemistry, when in reality, the very smallest percentage of it is brain chemistry. And a large part of it is spiritual warfare. So the ones who can be helped with some small doses of medication can manage it, and others are completely lost to the dark forces because they're difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, they're difficult. Nobody acknowledges, except for what, Jerry Marzinski and his buddies. Right. You know, there's a very small group of people combined that readily acknowledge this stuff, and they have the appropriate tools to solve these challenges. But essentially, it's just another form of conditioning that takes away from us and who we are. You have to give of your best self to have those things using those methods. And it's just not wise to go that route.
100%. Right on. This was fantastic information. Before we close out, remind the audience about what you do, and if they're interested, how they can find out more.
Well, I am a hypnotherapist. I offer coaching. I use various tools, cognitive behavioral therapy, to get to the bottom of things. You can find me on Boundless Authenticity Podcast. That's available on Spreaker, Rumble, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And all you got to do is just send me an email at selfsabotageinfo@proton.me. I also have a secondary podcast called Shadows of Curiosity, where I strictly look at fringe topics and stories, documented incidents of UFO contact and other things. If you have a story you want to share, you can email me at shadowsofcuriosity@protonmail.com. And I'm on Instagram at boundlessauthenticity.
Awesome. Jehan, thank you so much. We'll definitely be doing this again. So much more we can discuss. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow. Are you and your family prepared for an emergency? Maybe the fake alien invasion? Now is the time to prepare yourself and your family for any event. Check out Prep Starts Now. Their mission is to provide high-quality preparedness products that empower individuals and families to be ready for any situation. They're committed to delivering reliable, trusted gear to ensure your safety, security, and peace of mind in times of need. Their product selection is carefully curated to provide you with the essential gear you need to stay prepared. From emergency kits to tactical tools, every item is chosen for its reliability and practicality. Prep Starts Now understands the importance of family, and their goal is to equip you with everything you need to build a solid plan for your family's preparedness. In today's ever-changing world, being prepared is more important than ever, and Prep Starts Now is here to help you and your family stay ready with quality products and practical guidance. Use the link in the description and get 15% off your order. Hello friends, I am so excited to tell you about Independent Media Token. Independent Media Token is a brand new way to show your support for independent media without having to donate a dime. Independent Media Token is a cryptocurrency on the Solana blockchain designed to generate funds to promote and foster the growth of independent content creators, allowing them to engage in their art without having to worry about being demonetized. Through a network of media partners, of which you yourself can become a part of, Independent Media Token's goal is to ensure the powers that be can never cut off all of our areas of funding and censor the only free voices left in the world. Join the movement today. You can pick up Independent Media Token using Phantom Wallet or the Solana wallet of your choice, where you can easily swap your Solana for IMT. Grab some IMT today and remember to always know your team. To learn more, visit independentmediatoken.com or use the link right in the description.